Patrick Swayze was Hollywood's ultimate tough guy with a heart of gold. But behind the scenes of his final battle, there was one truth he refused to let the world see, until now. You see, we all think we know the story. You picture him lifting baby in the air. You see him fighting bouncers in Roadhouse. You see the strong, silent hero who could take a punch and keep dancing. But what if I told you that the strength we all admired was actually masking a lifetime of hidden agony? Most people believe Patrick Swayze died because he ran out of time, but the truth is he was fighting a war on two fronts. One was against a disease that eats you from the inside out, but the other was a battle against a ghost from his past that dictated every single move he made until his final breath. And the scariest part? He almost took this secret to the grave.
Let's go back to the moment everything changed. It wasn't on a movie set. It wasn't at a red carpet premiere. It was New Year's Eve, 2007. Patrick is drinking champagne. He's celebrating. But when he swallows, it feels like he's drinking fire. Not the burn of alcohol, actual fire. He ignores it, because that's what Patrick does. He's the guy who fell off a horse, broke both his legs, and kept filming. He's the guy who drained fluid from his own knee with a syringe just to keep dancing. Pain was just noise to him. But this time, the noise didn't stop. A few weeks later, he looks in the mirror. The eyes staring back at him are yellow. Not tired, yellow. He goes to a top-tier specialist, the kind of doctor who doesn't sugarcoat things. The diagnosis is the kind of nightmare that makes tough men crumble. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer.
Now, pause for a second. If you know anything about cancer, you know this is the game over card. The survival rate is less than 1%. Most people hear that news and they go home to say goodbye. They check into a hospital, they fade away. Patrick, he went to work. And this is where the story gets strange. He didn't just go back to work on a romantic comedy or a voiceover. He signed up for The Beast, a grueling, high-octane FBI drama where he had to run, jump, fight, and shoot guns in the freezing Chicago winter. Why? Why would a dying man spend his final precious months freezing in Chicago instead of holding his wife's hand on a beach? The media said it was because he was a warrior. They said he loved acting. And sure, that's part of it. But there was something else happening on that set that the cameras didn't see. Patrick Swayze made a decision that baffled his doctors. He refused to take painkillers. Let that sink in. He has a tumor eating his organs. He is doing 12-hour days of physical stunts, and he is doing it with zero pain relief. When the director asked him why, Patrick said something that sounded heroic. He said, "I need my eyes to be clear. I can't act if I'm high on morphine." Sounds noble, right? The dedicated artist. But wait, there is a darker reason he was able to turn off that pain. A reason that goes all the way back to a dance studio in Texas 40 years earlier. This is the pivot point. This is the secret he guarded. Patrick Swayze wasn't just born tough, he was built tough. And the architect of that toughness was his mother, Patsy Swayze. Now, in the 80s, everyone saw Patsy as the quirky dance mom, but behind closed doors, the reality was terrifying. Patrick grew up in a world where perfection wasn't a goal, it was a survival requirement. Friends and family have since come forward to reveal that Patsy was intense. And by intense, I mean physically abusive. She demanded excellence. If Patrick messed up a step, there was a consequence, and it wasn't a timeout. He learned very early that pain wasn't a signal to stop, it was a signal to work harder. So, when he's on the set of The Beast, dying of cancer, refusing morphine, he isn't just being a hero, he is reverting to the little boy who learned that you do not show weakness, you do not complain, you perform, even if it breaks you. This context changes everything.
It turns his final performance from a generic Hollywood struggle into a tragedy of Greek proportions. He was enduring the unendurable because he had been trained to do it since he was 5 years old. But the story doesn't end there, because while Patrick was fighting the physical war on set, the media was spinning a fairy tale.
They showed photos of him looking frail but smiling. "He's beating the odds," they screamed. "The miracle man." But the truth behind the walls of his ranch was much grimmer. By 2009, the cancer had spread to his liver. The miracle man weighed 90 pounds. The tough guy who could lift baby in the corner couldn't even lift a glass of water. And this is where the rumors started. Dark rumors. Tabloids began to whisper that Patrick wasn't just suffering from cancer. They claimed he was a prisoner in his own home. Stories leaked out about his wife, Lisa Nini. Now, you have to be careful here. Patrick and Lisa were the golden couple, married for 34 years. In Hollywood, that's basically 3 lifetimes. They were soulmates. They danced together. They flew planes together. But after he died, a friend came forward with a shocking claim. He said that in those final months, Patrick wasn't living in a love story. He claimed Patrick was isolated, banned from seeing his mother, left alone in his room. Was it true, or was it just bitter friends looking for a payout? Lisa denied everything. She said she cared for him with every ounce of her soul. She wrote about the nights she lay awake listening to his breathing, terrified it would stop. But the seed of doubt was planted. Was the tough guy actually a victim in his own home at the end? Let's look at the facts. Patrick loved Lisa. That is undeniable. But he also loved control. He was a man who needed to be the driver of his own destiny, and cancer took the steering wheel away. In those final days, Patrick had to confront the one thing he couldn't punch, kick, or dance his way out of. He had to confront surrender. And for a man raised by Patsy Swayze, surrender is the ultimate sin. There is a moment, just days before he died, that tells you everything you need to know about who Patrick really was. He was bedridden. He was slipping in and out of consciousness. The pain was beyond imagination. But he turned to Lisa. He didn't ask for medicine. He didn't complain about the unfairness of it all. He had one worry. He asked, "Did I do enough? Was I good enough?" Think about that. He's Patrick freaking Swayze. He's an icon. He's loved by millions. And on his deathbed, the little boy from the Texas dance studio is still asking if he hit the mark. That is the tragedy. The drive that made him a star was the same drive that wouldn't let him rest, even at the end. But then something shifted. On Monday morning, September 14th, 2009, the fight finally stopped. Lisa was by his side. She was holding his hand. She says she felt his pulse slow down. She felt the exact moment the tough guy persona dissolved, and only Patrick remained. His final words to her were not about his movies. They weren't about his regrets. They were simple. "I love you." And then silence. But here is the twist. The real secret wasn't the abuse. It wasn't the painkillers. It wasn't the rumors. The real secret is what he did with his pain. Most people who grow up with that kind of pressure, that kind of trauma, they become hard, they become cruel, they pass it on. Patrick Swayze broke the chain. Despite the demons of his childhood, despite the tiger mom upbringing, he never became that person. He was known as the kindest man in Hollywood, the guy who would stop his car to help a stranger change a tire, the guy who stayed married to one woman for 3 decades. He took all that fire, all that discipline, all that pain, and he didn't use it to hurt others. He used it to create art. He poured it into Ghost. When you see him crying in that movie, that's not acting. That is a man releasing decades of bottled-up emotion. When you see him fighting in Roadhouse, that's the rage of a boy who had to be perfect. And when you see him in The Beast, looking like a skeleton but acting with the ferocity of a lion,
That is the final testament of a man who refused to be a victim. So when you look back at Patrick Swayze Mao, don't just see the heartthrob, don't just see the dancer, see the survivor. See the man who carried a mountain of expectations on his back, who is trained to ignore his own bleeding, and who still managed to keep his heart soft in a world that tried to make him hard. The truth he refused to let the world see wasn't a scandal, it was his vulnerability. He spent his whole life trying to be the steel, but in the end, it was his humanity that made him a legend. He didn't lose his final battle. He finished it on his own terms. And that is a secret worth remembering.